Ident or Rationale.
There's an hour and a half of comedy this Friday on 4, starting at 9 in the emergency room.
How do you like that? The arm bone is connected to the shoulder bone.
At 9:30, it's the strong arm of Truscott in Fairlie's Secret Army.
In saluting me, you salute the idea of Truscottism. 1, 2, 3, down.
And girl problems for Frazier in Cheers at 10.
You are passionless, stoic, and emotionally numb.
Apology accepted.
Merci.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're fighting. He just asked for mercy.
Top comedy for Friday on Channel 4.
Now, programmes here on 4 for this Tuesday evening draw to an end, but not before we hear what happened today in their Lordship's house.
The Lords say Britain needs more trees to take up surplus farming land. Leaflets on AIDS are to be published in Chinese and other minority languages. And the House gets 3 defence chiefs in a row. And a new Lord Stockton. The government's handling of the crisis in agriculture has landed them in trouble with both farmers and conservationists, not least their plans for tackling the problems created by the common market food surpluses. Agriculture Secretary Michael Jopling proposed alternative uses for some farming land, and although there was an outcry against any spread of housing into the countryside, there was a welcome for the proposal to extend forests and woodlands. As it happens, this coincides with the conclusions of a recent report from a House of Lords Select Committee which specifically recommends the extension of forests. At present, some 9% of Britain's land surface is forested, a smaller area than many other European countries. And unlike the surpluses in milk and cereals, Britain and the community have to import a huge proportion of their timber. Although they foresee continued planting of trees in the uplands, the Select Committee suggests some better quality land should now be taken out of agriculture and used for forestry. The committee chairman, Lord Gallagher, explained why the Common Market Commission wanted a new forestry policy.
The discussion paper gives 4 reasons for a community initiative. First of all, a reduction in agricultural surpluses, in which forestry is seen as an alternative crop. Secondly, the overall community deficit in wood and wood products, which gives scope for increased production within the community. Thirdly, the maintenance and expansion of activity and employment in rural areas, which would flow from a community policy. And lastly, the need to stop the increasing destruction of the European forest by atmospheric pollution and fire.
The committee took the view that in the context of curbing agricultural surpluses, a more likely sequence of events, more likely, that is, than large areas of arable land being planted with trees, would be one where the trees move, as it were, downhill. And the noble Lord Gallagher referred to this. In case lest this should sound too much like the closing scenes of Macbeth, I should explain that we envisaged arable crop production becoming less viable economically on marginal land and being replaced by grass and livestock. In this process, sheep farming on the poorer uplands would move downhill or wherever the grazing was better.
The new factor in the report is, of course, the alternative use of agricultural land. And we have this enormous agricultural surplus, which is still growing. And a whole lot of solutions have been put forward, and forestry, of course, is one of them. But it is the most significant, and it is certainly the most obvious, that here we are with an enormous deficit in timber production in this country, and they have a lot of acres surplus, and therefore it seems certain we should plant them.
In a maiden speech, the Duke of Somerset, he's the 19th Duke, countered the argument that large conifer plantations produce an ecologically sterile environment.
Environmentally, conifers have attracted criticism. Some of this is due to past forest management mistakes, now acknowledged. Contrary to what some people believe, conifers can encourage bird life. And in Scotland, where planting still only accounts for a very small percentage of the land area, the two different types of habitat have a distinct benefit to wildlife. Trees provide shelter, roosting ground, and food. A pure conifer forest harbors 3 times the number of birds and diversity of species as the grass or heath it replaces. Buzzards and red kites have particularly benefited.
I think what has offended people so much is those straight lines on Scottish hills with the furrows going down the hill, which are there forever, and they do not blend naturally in with the countryside. Now, I am privileged enough to go and fish on the Helmsdale, and that Helmsdale strath is really a very beautiful strath, and there's some bits of it where there's been some quite large bits of pine forests planted, but what they do is they look as if they've been there forever, even though they've only been planted 20 or 30 years, because they fit round the hill, that they're not square, they're not regulated.
I'm sure that all of our lordships who have a practical knowledge of forestry at first hand and a first-hand concern for the countryside will know every bit as well as I do the absurdity of the anti-forestry campaign with its historical exaggerations. Yet the fact of the matter is that some 90% of the country is not afforested, and not even the most enthusiastic forester